Mark Kelly's Senate career just hit a historic breaking point. A court-martial, explosive evidence, and a ruling that stunned Washington. What really happened inside the chamber, and why this could change everything for political accountability? Stay tuned. This is the full story. Mark Kelly sat rigidly in the Senate chamber, the tension in the air thicker than any cloud in Washington. Every eye was on him, every whisper amplified by the gravity of the situation. Today was not just another routine session. It was the culmination of weeks of scrutiny, investigation, and mounting controversy that burked. Ruby Kiss. Only Ruby Kiss has the luxurious texture that would leave seas, as the long-last team may leave seas uncues. A loss-slacked long-lasting color. It was my Wally says, me, it was seas so long seas, it was seas ceases, it was my seas, my seas, my seased. Sea by seas, we are seasas, we are sea blies, it is it, we is seas it, it's it, apeka quid to mean, be it solely specicai to me kesa it to sit be su kisaki lissus to sweet let up at codies at it's it can't sest had placed him at the center of one of the most explosive court-martial proceedings in recent U.S. political history. As the lead prosecutor approached the podium, Kelly's mind raced, replaying every decision, every misstep, every public statement that had brought him here. He had believed in his career, in his service, in his untouchable position, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The chamber fell silent as the judge's voice rang out. Formal, authoritative, and mercilessly precise. Senator Mark Kelly, the court has reviewed the evidence, the testimonies, and the procedural records. This body now convenes to deliberate your accountability in actions deemed in violation of conduct standards under federal statutes. Murmurs rippled across the room, senators exchanging uneasy glances. Even the most seasoned political figures seemed unsettled, aware that precedent could be rewritten today. Cameras captured every twitch, every nervous blink, every tight grip on the polished wood of the desks. Outside, news vans and reporters pressed against barricades, live feeds buzzing with the anticipation of millions tuning in. Social media erupted, hashtags trending before the first sentence even concluded. Hashtag Mark Kelly court-martial. Hashtag Senate shock. Hash political earthquake. As the prosecutor detailed the charges. Kelly's expression remained stoic, though his jaw clenched in controlled tension. The allegations were severe: misuse of authority, breach of protocol, and decisions that had risked national security credibility. Every phrase was punctuated by evidence slides and audio clips, each more damning than the last. One by one, witnesses were called, some colleagues, some staff members, each recounting moments that painted a picture of mismanagement, overreach, and disregard for procedural boundaries. The contrast between his public image as a disciplined, meticulous figure and the accounts being presented was stark, undeniable. For the first time, the reality of the charges struck visually, dramatically. In the minds of those watching, this was not mere political theater. This was a full-scale accountability crisis unfolding live. Kelly's allies attempted to intervene, issuing statements, questioning motives, and appealing to his years of service. But the momentum had shifted. Even the most supportive senators found their confidence wavering under the weight of irrefutable testimony. Media coverage intensified the scrutiny, dissecting every word, every facial expression, every hand gesture, as if each micro-movement could reveal guilt or innocence. Analysts debated online, on TV, and across podcasts. Could Kelly survive this unprecedented court-martial scrutiny? Would this derail not only his career, but also impact the broader political equilibrium in Washington? In the gallery above, staffers held their breath as Kelly listened to recordings that meticulously documented procedural violations. Each clip landed like a hammer, hammering against the narrative he had built over decades. The audience could almost feel the invisible pressure pressing down. The weight of expectation and judgment compressing the chamber into a suffocating bubble of scrutiny. Public sentiment began to sway, polls predicting approval ratings tumbling, social media sentiment turning sharply critical. Clips of Kelly's tense posture circulated within minutes, gripping the edge of his seat. Hands tightening, eyes narrowing in an effort to maintain composure. By mid-morning, the atmosphere was electric. Every pause, every deliberate glance exchanged between senators was scrutinized. Commentators predicted that the deliberation might last hours, even days, with the potential for explosive outcomes. News anchors used terms like unprecedented, historic, and political earthquake repeatedly, each reinforcing the sense that the Senate was witnessing a critical turning point. Meanwhile, Kelly's defense team attempted rapid interventions, presenting counter-evidence, highlighting procedural errors, and emphasizing his decades of dedicated public service. But the momentum of public perception was harder to reverse. Optics had a life of their own, often more powerful than legal arguments or historical records. Then came the first break in proceedings. Kelly rose, addressed the chamber briefly, and delivered a controlled, measured statement. He acknowledged past decisions, expressed confidence in his service record, and appealed for the fair consideration of facts rather than speculation. The room remained quiet, the tension palpable, as senators absorbed each carefully chosen word. Outside, the live feeds showed viewers on edge, some clutching their devices, eyes wide, waiting to see the next twist in a story that had captivated the nation. The combination of personal accountability, procedural gravity, and political stakes made every second feel monumental as the session resumed. It became clear that this was more than a legal examination, it was a public reckoning. Kelly's every reaction was scrutinized for signs of remorse, defiance, or strategy. The intersection of law, politics, and media spectacle had never been so vividly on display, and those witnessing it knew that this could define his career, reshape public trust, and alter the trajectory of national political discourse. The first hours of the court-martial had already set the tone for what promised to be a dramatic, unprecedented series of events that would reverberate far beyond the Senate chamber as proceedings continued. The tension in the Senate chamber seemed to thrum like a live wire. Every corner of the room was charged with anticipation, every gaze fixed on Mark Kelly. His calm exterior was beginning to crack under the relentless pressure. The prosecution had shifted gears, presenting a timeline of events that meticulously detailed Kelly's actions leading up to the court-martial. The evidence was overwhelming, with internal memos, emails, and intercepted communications painting a vivid picture of misjudgments and lapses that could not be ignored. Senators leaned forward in their seats, absorbing each revelation with a mixture of shock and calculation. Fully aware that history was unfolding before their eyes, Kelly's defense team scrambled to maintain credibility, presenting character witnesses and highlighting his decades of public service. Yet, the emotional weight of the testimony as staff recounting sleepless nights, colleagues detailing moments of mismanagement struck a powerful chord in the chamber. Even those predisposed to defend him found themselves grappling with the stark contrast between image and reality. The deliberations were no longer just about legal technicalities. They had become a battle for public perception, a spectacle that would echo across headlines, social media, and the nation's collective consciousness. Outside the chamber, reporters raced to capture every nuance. Live feeds zoomed in on Kelly's expressions, dissecting his reactions to each revelation. Social media exploded with clips, memes, and heated debates. Analysts debated Kelly's future, questioning whether his political career could survive the dual pressures of procedural scrutiny and public outrage. Tweets and posts spread like wildfire. Hashtag Kelly court-martial, hashtag Senate shockwave, hashtag political storm. Every second seemed to magnify the stakes, making the courtroom drama a digital wildfire that consumed attention at lightning speed. Midway through the day, a critical moment arrived. The prosecution unveiled a series of previously confidential documents, exposing missteps that Kelly had attempted to obscure in public statements. Senators gasped audibly. Some scribbled notes, others whispered urgently among themselves. The documents illustrated a pattern of decisions that, while not criminal in nature, violated the ethical and procedural standards expected of someone in Kelly's position. The implications were enormous. This wasn't merely a personal reckoning, but a test of institutional integrity and accountability. Kelly's response was calculated, almost surgical. He took the podium, voice steady but firm, acknowledging certain errors while emphasizing intent, context, and historical service. He spoke of dedication to his constituents, a commitment to national security, and an unwavering belief in due process. The room remained silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a dense fog. Even as Kelly projected confidence, subtle signs betrayed the pressure. Tight fists, measured breaths, fleeting glances toward his team. Cameras captured every nuance, amplifying the moment for viewers across the country. As the afternoon session progressed, the tension escalated further. Witness after witness presented accounts of procedural breaches and questionable decisions, each reinforcing the narrative that Kelly had overstepped his boundaries. Senators weighed every point carefully, mindful that their eventual vote would not only decide the fate of a single individual, but also set a precedent for the treatment of elected officials under legal scrutiny. Conversations and murmurs echoed through the chamber, the gravity of their responsibility making each decision a matter of historical significance. News outlets ran continuous coverage, dissecting every piece of evidence and projecting potential outcomes. Editorials debated whether Kelly's expulsion could trigger broader political repercussions, perhaps destabilizing alliances and reshaping power dynamics within the Senate. Social media chatter fueled speculation, with citizens expressing disbelief, outrage, or support depending on their political leanings. The interplay between live proceedings and instantaneous public reaction created a feedback loop that magnified both tension and visibility. By late afternoon, the courtroom atmosphere had become almost unbearable. The Senate, once a place of calculated decorum, now felt like a high-stakes arena. Kelly's composure was admirable, but subtle signs of strain became increasingly evident: a furrowed brow, a tightening grip on the podium, occasional sighs that betrayed the human weight of scrutiny. Outside, supporters and critics alike monitored live streams, their reactions shaping real-time public sentiment. Every word spoken within the chamber reverberated far beyond the walls, making each moment a defining juncture in a story that would dominate headlines for days, if not weeks. As evening approached, a temporary recess was called. Senators filed out, murmuring, strategizing, and contemplating the unprecedented implications of what they had witnessed. Kelly returned to his seat, quietly conferring with his defense team, aware that the next few hours could seal the outcome of his career and influence the nation's perception of accountability in governance. The cameras remained rolling, capturing every subtle movement, every exchange of whispers, every glance that hinted at anticipation and uncertainty. The stage was set for the next critical phase of deliberations. Kelly's fate hung in the balance, and with every minute, the weight of history pressed heavier. The combination of legal scrutiny, political strategy, and public fascination created a spectacle unlike anything Washington had seen in recent memory. Observers understood that the court-martial was not merely a trial, it was a seismic event, a confluence of law, politics, and media spectacle, each magnifying the other, each intensifying the stakes. The tension in the chamber deepened as Part 3 of the proceedings unfolded. Senators returned from recess, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and the faint hum of whispered discussions. Every movement, every glance, carried weight. Kelly appeared more composed than ever, yet the strain behind his calm demeanor was palpable. His legal team meticulously reviewed notes, readying for the next series of cross-examinations and evidentiary presentations that could define the remainder of the trial. The prosecution seized the moment, introducing a sequence of new testimonies that struck at the core of Kelly's controversial decisions. Former aides and staffers detailed incidents that highlighted both lapses in judgment and patterns of mismanagement. One particularly compelling witness recounted moments when Kelly's directives contradicted established procedures, causing confusion and delays that ripple effects in sensitive Senate operations. Every revelation was accompanied by corroborating documents, each piece intensifying the narrative of negligence and accountability. Kelly listened carefully, nodding occasionally but remaining largely expressionless. Yet subtle signs betrayed his awareness of the gravity of each claim. Tight lips, rapid note-taking by his defense, and brief glances exchanged across the chamber. Senators absorbed each statement with keen scrutiny, weighing evidence against their own interpretations of leadership, ethics, and responsibility. The atmosphere was electric. Each comment could sway opinions. Each piece of evidence could tilt the outcome of the trial as the testimonies continued. The media outside amplified every moment. Live feeds dissected every gesture, reaction, and remark. Social media erupted with commentary and speculation. Hashtags trending. Hashtag Kelly court-martial. Hashtag Senate scandal. Hashtag political accountability. Analysts debated the potential fallout, discussing what expulsion could mean for future Senate protocol, the balance of power, and the precedent set for elected officials facing legal scrutiny. Every moment within the chamber had consequences that stretched far beyond Washington, cascading into public perception nationwide. Midway through the afternoon, a pivotal exchange occurred. A senior committee member posed a question that caught Kelly slightly off guard, probing the rationale behind a series of critical decisions. His response was measured, citing intent, historical service, and unforeseen complications. While his composure impressed some observers, others noted the subtle tremor in his voice and the measured pause before each statement. Analysts on live commentary dissected every word, framing it as a moment where credibility hung in the balance. The chamber's energy escalated as multiple senators pressed for clarifications. Kelly's defense team worked tirelessly, attempting to counter the growing tide of evidence and testimony. Each rebuttal required precise articulation, strategic framing, and careful calibration to mitigate the perception of guilt. Yet, despite their efforts, the mounting evidence painted a coherent picture of procedural lapses, ethical ambiguities, and decisions that could not easily be defended under scrutiny. The complexity of the case was clear. Legal technicalities, political pressure, and public expectation intertwined, creating a high-stakes environment where each misstep could be devastating. Outside, the public reaction mirrored the chamber's intensity. Newsrooms provided continuous coverage. Analysts dissected the finer points of testimony, and citizens engaged in heated debates online. Clips of tense exchanges circulated rapidly, often gaining more traction than full session footage. Influencers and political commentators leveraged each moment to discuss implications for Kelly's career and the Senate's credibility. The combination of real-time information and instantaneous public response transformed the court-martial into a cultural event, captivating audiences far beyond typical political interest. By late afternoon, Kelly's team introduced strategic witnesses intended to mitigate the impact of the prosecution's evidence. Former colleagues offered character references highlighting years of service and dedication, while these testimonies attempted to humanize Kelly and contextualize decisions. The prevailing narrative of accountability remained strong. Senators weighed each word, each testimony, carefully balancing legal responsibility with public expectation. The tension was palpable, as every individual in the chamber understood the historical significance of the moment. As proceedings approached the final hours of Part 3, attention shifted to a particularly contentious line of questioning. Senators probed previous communications, seeking to uncover whether decisions were motivated by intent, oversight, or negligence. Kelly's responses were deliberate, crafted to clarify intent without admitting wrongdoing. The interplay between legal strategy and political optics was evident. Every word had to be precise, every pause calculated. Outside observers analyzed tone, expression, and implication, noting that even minor errors could magnify consequences in the court of public opinion. With evening approaching, the chamber paused briefly for deliberation. Senators conferred quietly, digesting the flood of evidence, testimony, and context. Kelly retreated momentarily with his defense team, reviewing strategies for the final stretch. The tension was universal, within the chamber, among the press, and across the country. The sense of witnessing history in real time was undeniable. The magnitude of the court-martial's impact was clear. This was more than a trial. It was a spectacle of political accountability, legal scrutiny, and public engagement converging in a singular moment of national attention as the final hours of the proceedings unfolded. The tension in the Senate chamber reached an almost unbearable peak. Every senator, lawyer, and observer sensed that the coming moments could define not only Mark Kelly's career, but also set a precedent for accountability in Washington. The air was thick with anticipation, and even small gestures, fingers tapping on desks. Whispers exchanged felt magnified in the collective consciousness of the room. The prosecution brought forth one last wave of evidence: internal communications, memos, and previously undisclosed emails that revealed inconsistencies in Kelly's decisions. Each piece was meticulously highlighted, showing the chain of events that had led to the court-martial in the first place. The room remained silent as the evidence was projected onto screens, the stark documentation casting a long shadow over Kelly's previously defended actions. Senators leaned forward, dissecting each line, each timestamp. As the implications became undeniably clear, Kelly's defense team rose to respond. Knowing that this final opportunity might be the defining moment of their strategy, they emphasized intent, highlighted mitigating circumstances, and presented testimonials from allies who attested to Kelly's dedication and service. Yet, despite their eloquence, the weight of cumulative evidence proved challenging to counter. The contrast between procedural missteps and the defense's narratives became glaring, leaving many senators visibly conflicted about how to proceed as questions from senators intensified. Kelly maintained his composure, articulating carefully structured responses. Each answer aimed to clarify, justify, or contextualize. Yet the relentless scrutiny seemed to chip away at the credibility his team had been working to preserve. The chamber buzzed with energy. Every word, every reaction was analyzed by aides, journalists, and the watching public. Analysts on live feeds highlighted micro-expressions, tone shifts, and body language, framing the proceedings as a battle not just of facts, but of perception and public opinion. The climax arrived when a particularly pointed question regarding a critical decision forced Kelly into a rare moment of visible hesitation. Senators pressed on, probing deeper into policy implications and the consequences of his directives. Kelly's response, though composed, was noticeably calculated, reflecting the high stakes and the understanding that any misstep could finalize his downfall. Social media amplified every reaction in real time, as clips of tense exchanges were shared globally, often faster than the session could even progress. The media frenzy outside the chamber mirrored the intensity within. Newsrooms broadcasted continuous updates, commentary panels dissected testimony, and viral threads dissected Kelly's every move. Hashtags such as hashtag Kelly expelled, hashtag court-martial shock, and hashtag Senate scandal dominated platforms, drawing viewers who rarely followed political trials but were now captivated by the unfolding drama. Each clip, comment, and analysis magnified the stakes, turning the court-martial into a national event of immense public interest. In the final stretch, senators delivered their closing remarks. Each addressed the gravity of the situation, the need for accountability, and the precedents this case could establish. Arguments oscillated between defending Kelly's past contributions and emphasizing the undeniable missteps that had prompted the court-martial. The tension was palpable. Decisions that would affect not just Kelly but public confidence in governmental institutions hung in the balance. Kelly's own closing statement was measured yet poignant. He acknowledged the criticisms, highlighted his years of service, and attempted to contextualize the decisions that had led to this moment. His words carried weight, resonating with some senators. Yet others remained steadfast in their resolve that accountability must prevail over intent alone. The interplay of law, politics, and public perception became evident. This was no longer just a court-martial. It was a defining moment in modern political accountability. As the final votes were tallied, the atmosphere reached a crescendo. Each senator's decision was crucial, and the collective anticipation could be felt across the chamber. Whispers, glances, and subtle shifts in posture signaled the magnitude of the moment. Kelly sat quietly, his defense team ready to respond if necessary, while media cameras captured every nuance. The entire nation seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the conclusion of a trial that had captured unprecedented attention. By the end of the session, the ruling was announced. Kelly's expulsion from the Senate was official. A historical moment that combined elements of law, politics, and public scrutiny. The decision reverberated beyond the chamber, triggering discussions across news networks, social media, and public forums nationwide. Analysts immediately began evaluating the implications for future governance, ethical standards, and the precedent it set for elected officials under scrutiny. Outside the chamber, reactions ranged from shock to vindication. Citizens debated the fairness of the process, the consequences for public trust, and the broader impact on political accountability. Viral clips circulated, dissecting each moment, each word, and each expression. The court-martial became a case study in transparency, political consequence, and the evolving expectations of leadership in the public eye. For Mark Kelly, the expulsion marked a dramatic and defining end to a turbulent chapter. But for the nation, it represented a stark reminder of the stakes inherent in public service.